This is the One Girl Revolution podcast, a podcast that highlights the stories of world-changing women and girls across the country. We hope that these stories inspire you, but even more so, we hope that these stories help you to see your own value, your purpose, and your power to change the world through your life. Every woman and girl is a One Girl Revolution. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, we welcome Gina Spehn, co-founder of the New Day Foundation for Families. I have been following Gina's journey and her incredible foundation's work for years, and I'm so excited to finally have her on the podcast to share about her incredible story and her inspiring work. Gina and her husband, Michael, started the New Day Foundation in memory of their late spouses, with a mission to provide financial and emotional support to families facing cancer. Their work is driven by a deep sense of empathy, compassion, and personal experience with loss, and they're making a tremendous impact by helping families stay strong through their hardest days. In this episode, Gina shares her deeply personal journey with cancer that led her to this work, the challenges families face when dealing with cancer, and how the New Day Foundation is transforming lives by offering critical support when it's needed most. Whether it's covering household bills, the bills for the children's activities to keep some semblance of normalcy in their lives, or simply providing a community of care, the New Day Foundation is giving families the hope and strength they need to move forward. Fun fact, and you'll hear about it in this episode, Gina and her husband, Michael, wrote a New York Times bestseller called The Color of Rain, which also was made into a Hallmark movie. You need to check it out. Get the book today. Go check out the Hallmark movie. It's incredible and so inspiring and really highlights their life and their story. Get ready to be inspired by Gina's incredible story of resilience, love, and hope. Let's dive into my conversation with Gina now. Here we go. Gina, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and I'm honored to do this with you today.
I am so excited to have you on. I have been following your story and your incredible work for years now. And I feel like over the past couple of months, I keep being at events where you're also there and people announce, oh, Gina from the New Day Foundation is here. And I kept being like, I need to reach out. I need to have her on the podcast. They're doing such incredible work. And then as luck would have it, a week or so ago, you and I were at the same event and sat at the same table. And it wasn't until just after the event that I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, that was Gina, my girl from the New Day Foundation. So this was meant to be, and I don't believe in coincidences. So this obviously was the perfect time that you should be on this podcast. So I'm just so excited to finally have you on the podcast.
Yeah, we are no longer like two ships passing in the night. We are here and we are together. And I had no idea that you even knew my name. So that's kind of cool that we found each other.
I know, it's just meant to be. So here we are. And I want to talk about the great work that you're doing with the New Day Foundation and all about your story. There's so much that we have to talk about, but this podcast really is about your story and, of course, the great work that you're doing. So I would love to rewind and hear a little bit about your own journey, your own story, who you are, where you're from. And I know you also have a very personal journey with cancer. And so maybe you can touch on that a little bit too.
Sure. Well, I don't know how far back you want to go, but I was born in Detroit many, many years ago. We won't discuss that number, but born and raised here in Michigan, and eventually found my way through, high school into college at Michigan State University. And that's where I met the love of my life, Matt Kell. He and I were married like in 1992. We were very young. We had just turned 23. So there I gave away my age for anybody who wants to do math. And, we were just this young and, couple. We didn't have kids for about 6 years. We just did a lot of traveling and working, and life was really good. And so it was like in the fall of 2002 was our 10-year wedding anniversary. And my husband had felt something in his leg, like a lump, like how women who do breast exams find something sometimes. Well, he was just toweling off after a shower and felt something right inside of his thigh. It was like a little marble. And his family history was such that We had lost his dad to cancer just a few years earlier, and his dad was 49 years old. And then here we were, Matt feels this thing in his leg, and he says, he goes, this is weird. He goes, I better go get it checked out. And, where this is going. I mean, sure enough, he was diagnosed with cancer at a very young age. He was 32 years old when he was diagnosed. And at the time, we had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. So the next 3 years, he went through cancer and did really well. It's interesting, sometimes people get diagnosed with cancer and find themselves able to be really productive and work and live and do all of the things while going through their treatments or whatever they're doing. And he did really well for that first probably year and a half, I would say. And then it started to get hard. It started to get really challenging in different ways. He was doing different clinical trials and doing a lot of holistic type of care and everything he could think of to try to, win this battle. And we were, like I said, we had 2 little kids. We were young. We had a tremendous amount of support. And at the time that my husband was diagnosed, he was working as the general sales manager at WDIV, which is the NBC affiliate here in the Detroit area. And I guess his boss's boss at that job knew his late father, knew this family, and for whatever reason and however he did it, he managed to pull the strings that were needed that we didn't have to lose a day of income. That is not normal, I will say. And we recognized that because we were very concerned, like what was going to happen. He was the primary breadwinner in our family. When we decided to have children, we made the decision, together that I would stay home with the kids and no longer work. So we're on a 1 income. And so here we were thinking, oh my gosh, if we're not getting, paid, we're probably not gonna be able to stay in this house. And, maybe we'll sell a car and maybe, we were trying to figure it out, but we didn't lose that income. In fact, we had it all the way up until the last day of my husband's life. And even after he passed away, he did work part of the year, but not the full year, but he received his full year-end bonus as well, which came 2 months after he died. And so it was it was strange because on the one hand, here we were very blessed that we never lost income. And on the other hand, experienced that fear and anxiety that comes with the thought that we might not have this income. So after my husband passed away, a group of his friends had a golf outing because that's what dudes do when they lose one of their buddies. And it was a really successful golf outing. They had a couple hundred people showed up, and they ended up raising about $55,000 at the end of when all was said and done. And we looked around and thought, wow, what are we going to do with this money? And the first year we actually donated it to a church, to a fund at the church called the Love for Others Fund. And it was just a way for us to make sure that the money was being given to people who had needed basic things like their light bill paid or food or just anything basic. So it was a year after that we started New Day Foundation for Families because, we had just gone through this experience and we realized if we have another golf outing, we want to use that money to support cancer patients like our own family. So that was sort of what prompted us to start the foundation in the first place. But backing up a little bit and talk about my late husband, if I can, because he was a remarkable person. So Matt was a guy who very lighthearted, always kind of funny and jovial and very quick-witted and smart. He was a very smart guy. And he was successful at a young age. And he always said to me, I got a great job at a young age and I used up all my cars. And because God knew, because he's loved cars. And this guy we had like 13 cars in 10 years of marriage. I don't understand how you need that many cars. It was our only thing we really ever thought about. I'm like, he would come home like from work, like he'd leave in one car and come home at the end of the day in another car. I'm like, what are you doing? So anyway, but like he always just kind of felt like, like he lived his life to the full and he had, he lived a great life and felt good about all of that. And the thing about him that drove him was his faith in God. And that was really sort of the the undercurrent to our marriage, to our ability to walk through cancer together. I mean, he led me through that. I mean, his strength became my strength because he would say things to me like, having cancer is a win-win. And I'm thinking, I remember distinctly him saying those words, and it was on the heels of like a very difficult interaction with our 3-year-old, which you think wouldn't be such a big deal, but sometimes 3-year-olds really can set a really crazy tone in your house. And so here we were in this moment, and I said, I can't do this without you. Like, I can't raise these 2 little boys without you. And he said, you're going to be okay. And I don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know what's going to happen. But if I live to be 80 and we grow old together, that's obviously a win. He said, but if I am called home as a young man and have to confront that, sooner than we want, he's like, it's a win. He says, I believe, Jesus is my Lord and Savior. I believe there's victory in heaven, and that I'll see you all again, and it won't be but a minute. And I thought, I was completely belligerent. Like, are you crazy? Like, what are you even talking? You know what I mean? My reaction was so just in disbelief. But then at the same time, I tried to really receive what he was saying and really believe what he was saying, because I call myself a Christian, but now in this moment, do I really believe all those promises? So that became sort of a turning point in the cancer journey for us. And then I feel like it's worth noting. So my husband died, it was Christmas Day of 2005. And it was 10 years later in 2015 when one of our 2 sons, our youngest biological son, and I say that because I remarried and added 3 children to my family. And I'm going to tell you that story in a minute, but that's a whole nother part of the story. But our youngest son was also diagnosed with pediatric brain cancer. He was 14 years old. He was diagnosed in 2015. And here we were again, right? Being confronted once again with a cancer diagnosis, only this time it's my child. And, what do I do with this? Like, it's one thing when you have an adult or you're the adult in your life, but now you have your child. And how do you walk a child through that? And so that goes back to the faith conversation from earlier, which is, it was such an important part of truly accepting what you were being confronted with and accepting whatever the outcome was going to be, and trusting God, whether it was what we prayed for or whether it wasn't what we prayed for. And so that was an experience. That was these were some of the experiences that grew and stretched my faith beyond anything I could have ever imagined, and really helped me help our children, to show them that what it looks like to trust God completely and to not, sort of lean on your own strength in these times. Because who has strength when they're going through cancer? Even caregivers, we're not invincible, and we need help, and we need a source of strength that does not come from this world. I'm telling you, it is by the grace of God, I believe that we are sustained through these experiences. But so that's that part of the story. But then if I go back a little bit again, a couple years after my husband passed away, I met Michael Spehn, and he lost his wife to cancer as well. And Michael, his wife's name was Kathy, and Kathy and my late husband grew up together, which is the crazy part of the story. Yeah.
That's wild.
Isn't that amazing? And we didn't know each other. Michael and I had never met each other. I'd actually met Kathy one time, just in the few months before my husband passed away. She actually died just 6 weeks later, in a different situation. She had gone into the hospital with a terrible headache, was diagnosed with cancer, and 17 days later lost her battle with this inoperable brain tumor. It was a really tragic and sudden event, whereas a lot of times cancers can be longer, journeys, sort of years long in some cases. This was not. So we met on the heels of that, and Michael and I ultimately became sort of the Brady Bunch of Rochester, Michigan, blended two families. There were 5 kids total, and raised those kids, and now everybody is grown and flown. So that's, which is really cool. But and I should also note that our son who had cancer is a cancer survivor. So he has thankfully overcome the odds. I mean, glioblastoma is a fairly deadly form of brain cancer. It's got a 4% survival rate, and he's still here. Let's see, it was 2015, so almost 9 years later. And again, I always like to point this out to people, because we prayed the same prayers for Matt and for Kathy, right, that we prayed for Sam. And the outcomes were very different. But God is still the same God. And he wasn't punishing anyone, and he wasn't trying to, cause us harm. I just believe that the outcomes are a mystery to us. We don't get to know what the whys or the hows of these things, but we just have to trust him and find peace with accepting what is. And so that's a process. And I'll tell you, it sounds so easy when you just sort of say it. It's almost trite. And I don't want it to be that, when you hear me speak of it. But when Sam, our son, was going through cancer, we did a lot of, reading daily devotions and reading from scripture and things like that. And every time we would sit down to do that, every single time, there was like a gift in it for us. I mean, it didn't change our circumstances. It didn't take away the pain or the suffering that he was experiencing, but my gosh, there was a gift in it every single day. So we made it our practice to do that. And it was a big part of our ability to walk through cancer together as a mom and a son, and as a family as well. So yeah, so that's the long version of how I've been affected by cancer. And there's countless other stories of family members and such, but having lost a spouse and having had a child, that really informed me a lot about the needs of families when going through these types of circumstances. And I know you have your own story like that. So
Yeah. Well, and that's one reason that I really resonated with the New Day Foundation. And I think I've been following before even my mom had her, my own cancer journey, because I feel like even being a caretaker or being a family member, we're survivors too of that. And the struggle that you go through as someone walking with someone with cancer, you don't know what it's like until you're actually there, and all of the stresses, and it's exhausting, and you're trying to care for this person who's suffering, and then you're kind of suffering alongside them in so many different ways. And then the financial burden, people don't even think about that. And I know that I shared with you, and I've shared on this podcast, when my mom was diagnosed, she was diagnosed with cholangiocarcinoma, which is a really rare form of cancer, stage 4, and she passed away 6 weeks later. And thankfully, we had such great family and friends that were supportive, and they were doing everything from donating money to make sure that we could get the bed that was comfortable for her, or different things that she needed, or just even like little treats that she loved, or people donating gift cards for meals for the family, because it was like all hands on deck. And we were doing like around the clock care, which is, you've been through that and you know what that's like, but people that haven't been through cancer, they don't necessarily know what that's like. And so I think it's so incredible that you've been able to use your story to help other people who are going through something similar to not feel so alone, and say there are other people who have been through this. If you're enjoying this episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, please subscribe today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We have a new inspiring episode coming out every single week, and you don't want to miss a single one. Subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast today. Your story also, we should mention that your story, you wrote a book, you're a New York Times bestseller that also was turned into a Hallmark movie. Can you talk about that? How did you get the opportunity to write your story into a book, and I will be sure to link it so people can check it out. They can buy your book and they can watch the Hallmark movie. But talk about that.
Sure. Yeah, so that was interesting. We didn't really set out to like, we weren't like, we're going to write a book and get it published. You know what I mean? We didn't know this was going to happen. And we certainly didn't know there would be a movie made about it. Those were kind of unexpected things that happened to us. But, we had met with this, it was funny. So my husband and I were at an event for a fundraiser for our organization, and this gentleman had come to the event. And for like a couple of years, we'd been saying to each other, my gosh, like we gotta write this down. We gotta write a book. You talk about it like that. People do that all the time. There are so many people with so many fascinating stories and just crazy circumstances. And it's like, gosh, you got to write that down. And we had this event, and this man came and he had his children with him. And after the event, and our kids were there too, and he saw our kids and he saw our family, and he came up to us and said, my wife is going through cancer, and I made it a priority to come to this event because I wanted to see you and I wanted to see your family. And it gives me hope because I know that my wife doesn't have long. And I just wanted to know that we were going to be okay. It was this crazy thing. And we couldn't even imagine, right? That, and we're driving home that night, and my husband said to me, that's why we need to write the book. He goes, because we can't meet with every guy like that and sit and talk with them for a half an hour and have that interaction. He goes, but boy, we could tell the story. And I thought, okay, what do we do? How do we do this? How do we write a book? And so we had this brainstorm that I was going to write the whole book in 3 weeks. That was the plan. And I don't know if you've ever written a book, but it does not work like that. But we didn't know at the time it was going to take a little bit longer than 3 weeks. We had literally had sent me down to Florida for this period of time. My mother-in-law had a condo, and it was vacant. And she said, you can have it. Just go down to Florida and sit and write your book. And I'm thinking, okay. And my husband told me all the stories about what I needed to know from his perspective. And I get down there, and it was like immediately I had writer's block. Had never even imagined I could write. I'm like, I can't even write my own stuff. How am I going to write yours? So I wanted to get inspiration. So I went to Barnes and Noble in Florida, and it was a 2-story Barnes and Noble. And I walked up the top of the stairs, and right next to the top of the stairs was this table, and the thing on the table said how to write a book. That was like the little stand, how to write a book. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, hello, I need this. So I pulled a bunch of books off of the table, and I started reading through them, and I really realized that you could do it. You could write a book and dual first person author. So called my husband, who was back home, mind you, with the 5 kids while I'm down in Florida. And I said, you get to write your own stuff. I said, I don't have to write it for you. You should do it yourself. And then we'll combine it. And so that began a 2-year journey toward writing our story. And it became this very cathartic process. Some of it was, we went deep with a lot of it. And I always try to tell people this, cancer happens in the story, but the book is not about cancer. So you're not getting every appointment and every detail. What this book is really about is it's about faith. It's about hope. It's about love. It's about reconciliation. It's about, what it means to what caregiving looks like, the depths of that, what it looks to, you get glimpses into the cancer experience, but that's not what it's really all about. So bigger purpose to the story. So it was a couple years after the book came out. And actually, no, it wasn't a couple years after it came out. It was the same year it came out. And this guy was on a treadmill in California, apparently a producer, saw us interviewed on the Today Show and said, I think that I could make that into a movie. And then he called us. And then a couple of years later is when the movie came out. And it was on the Hallmark channel. And it was Lacey Chabert played me, and a guy named Warren Christie played my husband. And we took our kids to Vancouver, Canada, where it was being filmed, and we actually shared in the experience of all of that. So that was a really unique part of our story too.
So much in life, as you're sharing your story, I'm thinking about so many things in life we can't control, right? We can't control what happens to us or things that we go through, but a lot of times we can control how we react to that. And I'm thinking about my own cancer journey, your cancer journeys now, and it's how you react to things and saying like, okay, will I let this like end my life, or will I let this grief or this suffering keep me from being the person that I was created to be, and not to sugarcoat difficult things in life. But so often we're given opportunities to help other people through our stories. And I think what you're doing through sharing your story, and even through the book and the Hallmark movie, it's giving other people hope and helping them know that they're not alone. And I know that through the New Day Foundation, you're really doing that. You're wrapping your arms around individuals and families that are going through a cancer journey. Sometimes they're going through cancer treatment, but I know also you're working with people that may be at the end of their cancer journey as well, and just walking alongside them and supporting them financially. Because a lot of times in these situations where we're going through difficulty, you're stressing about so many different things, and you end up kind of living your life in fear in so many different aspects, but you're taking that away from families, which is so incredible. I would love to have you talk about the New Day Foundation. I know you've been doing this work for a while now. Talk about the great work that you're doing and kind of how it's evolved from that first. You talked about that first kind of moment when you were like, all right, we have to start something to help other people. We have this funding, we have this money. We want to help others. Talk about how it came to be, and then how it's evolved and grown into what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's been a journey. It's been 17 years of doing the work. And in the first, I would say 5 to 8 years that we were an organization, I would refer to it more as like a mom and pop kind of an organization. We were, at the time, think of it, we had just blended our two families. We had 5 kids, they were young. We were trying to figure out our day-to-day lives, and at the same time wanting to help people, but not yet really having any sort of mechanism to do that. So what we would do is we would look in the church bulletin, or we would hear from somebody that so-and-so had cancer, and we'd say, how can we help? And we would try to offer support to families. And it was just handfuls of people in the beginning. And it was around the time that the book was coming out, and I was trying to figure out what was I going to do with my life, and what did I have to go? Should I go back to work full time? What should I be doing? And my heart drew me back into New Day, and wanting to go into that and do it full time. And so that sort of became the turning point when my husband and I said, let's go meet with some social workers at one of the bigger hospital systems in town. And we met with Beaumont Hospital at the time, which is now called Corewell. And we met their social workers, and I will never forget this, because we didn't know what we didn't know about how important what we were doing would be. And we understood it because we lived it, but then all of a sudden here we were. So there's 3 social workers in the room, and we tell the story, we want to provide financial assistance, we want to provide emotional support. And we want to pay people's bills for things like their housing, their utilities, transportation, food, childcare, whatever was needed. And one of the social workers started to cry, which isn't really a characteristic common to social workers. They're kind of like wired up so that they're not super emotional and sensitive in those ways. And I said, well, what is it? And she's like, I have a mom who's not coming to treatment because she can't afford childcare. And she's single, and she's literally risking her life simply because she can't afford somebody to watch her kids. So here she is, not getting treatment, has a curable cancer, and is risking that by not showing up. She goes, if we can get her, a few months worth of childcare that's covered, the cost of that is covered, she'll be okay, and her kids will have a mom, and she was very emotional. And I at that moment I thought, this is what it's about. It's really about helping people stay compliant, helping people put food on their table, and not have that overwhelming fear about making really hard choices between their care and providing for the basic necessities, or having to uproot your entire family and move in the middle of going through cancer because you're getting evicted. It's really hard stuff. So it became really apparent very quickly that we needed to partner with more hospitals. So that began the journey to connect to every hospital system in Michigan. And we just have gone across the state now. Every market, we are there. We are in those hospitals. They know who we are. The social work teams are there. They know who we are, whether you live in a small rural town up in, northern Michigan, or you're in a big city like Detroit, or you're out in West Michigan and Grand Rapids. It doesn't, like, we're there. And so one of the things that has been really important to us these last couple of years is trying to spread the word about that and letting people know, like, when you walk into that hospital, a lot of people's priority is, I need to get well, I need to beat cancer, I need to get good treatment. But we know, and like doctors will even say, like, our patients need more than medicine to survive. They need the financial resources, they need the emotional support that you provide. And so that's what we do. So we get all of our referrals come through the social work community primarily. Sometimes it's a nurse navigator or financial consultant or something like that, but they make the referrals online to us directly. And our program team talks to every single family. So we don't treat people like transactions. I mean, I'm very passionate about this for our organization, that it might cost a little bit more for us to spend that time with a family, but I think that the benefit of doing that far outweighs the costs. And we'll just, that's going to be who we are forever. I've had people say, oh, you could be much more streamlined if you just said if you reached out to us and you have a need, it's boom, boom, boom. I said, no, we're going to assess people's needs. We're going to look at, what do you really need? Are you just afraid right now, or are you really in trouble financially or emotionally? How can we help you? What can we do specifically to meet your needs? Because not everybody's needs are the same. And so that's what we do. We really are a bit of a safety net for the cancer community. We provide, like I said, housing, utilities, transportation, food, those miscellaneous expenses, childcare. Sometimes we even help a family who they really want to keep their kids, in a sports program. And the cost of doing that is just too much when there's zero balance on the bank account. How am I going to pay for that? So we'll sometimes just step in and just help the kids maintain normalcy in their lives. So, we do, like I said, we do a lot of listening and hopefully helping families. And it's been, like, probably, I would have to say, this is working in this capacity has been the greatest privilege of my life. I feel like it's a calling on my life. And I feel like I have this amazing team of women who, all of whom have been touched by cancer in some way, shape, or form. Some have actually had cancer. Some have had, like myself, lost a husband to cancer, have loved ones. I think most of us have a cancer story. We've been touched in some capacity, and just to have the privilege of walking alongside families who are there, and truly just need, like, someone to bridge the gap for them and someone to listen to them. That's all it takes. I've had people say to me, well, how can paying somebody's bills for 3 months solve the problem? Or, and I said, well, we're not really solving a problem, right? Like, we're just sort of a temporary measure, like anything, like the treatment itself. Treatment is a temporary measure to get you well, and we're part of that equation. So we're one of the keys, I think, the key pillars of cancer care. And so, yeah, as long as I'm alive, hopefully we'll be doing this great work, and it will go on hopefully long beyond me. So, yeah.
Well, you have accomplished so much, and I can't wait to see where you go from here. But as you're talking, I'm thinking about, like, in this world of AI, everything is so automated, and it's so beautiful that you're really building community around people, because also we just want to be seen and heard. And especially when we're going through something difficult, what a beautiful thing that your team are talking to these people and saying whatever little thing you need, whether it's your kids staying in their sports program. Normalcy is so critical for not only the person. Obviously, it's not a normal situation that you're going through when you're going through cancer, but anything that you can keep as normal as possible, keeping people at home if that's what they want to do, and making sure that they have support. And that costs money a lot of times. Or, cleaning their house. There's a great organization that we've highlighted on this podcast, Cleaning for a Reason. And they actually came and cleaned my family's home a couple of times during my mom's cancer journey, but it's those little things. People a lot of times think like, oh, it has to be this big thing or it's all medical, but no, you're sharing it's all these different facets of our everyday lives and the lives of the kids and the parents and, you know, the other caretakers. How can we really build a support system around these individuals and their families? And I'm also thinking about how each and every one of us can emulate that work, right? We can obviously, and we'll talk about how people can get involved in the New Day Foundation, but I think about like what we can all do something, whether it's making a meal for someone who's going through a cancer journey or having their house clean, paying someone to come and clean their house, or finding resources for them like the New Day Foundation or like Cleaning for a Reason and signing them up. But we can all do something.
Yeah, sometimes it's as simple as listening. I mean, honestly, everybody always says, "Oh, I don't know what to say. I feel so bad. I don't know what to say." And I want to say, walk in with a smile. Like don't walk in with a sad face, the one that's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Walk in and smile. I mean, that's what people want that. People just want you to listen. You don't need to have any words. In fact, sometimes it's best if you don't, and just like you said, it can be the simplest, the smallest things. And it makes all the difference. Just taking out the trash for someone, or offering to pick a kid up from school or any of those things. Those are the those are the little details that make all the difference in the course of a day for a family that's going through cancer. And everybody can do something, and it does not have to be grandiose. It's always in the little details, I believe. And you mentioned something. Okay, Cleaning for a Reason, great organization, and we've referred families to Cleaning for a Reason. So I want to point this out because in the cancer community, there are a ton of resources, and we kind of love that. Like, there's not a ton of overlap. So what we know that when we're making a referral to somebody, it's usually for something that we don't do. Like, for example, Gilda's Club is a wonderful organization. They do a lot of group sessions, and they work a lot with, cancer types. Like, so if you have a breast cancer diagnosis, maybe a whole group of people will come and gather around that, or even the rare types of cancers, like maybe it's like a sarcoma cancer or something like that. They're connecting people in a different way than what we can do. So we want those organizations out there so we can make those referrals to them. Cleaning for a Reason is another one, and we just love them. We love, like, we have partners at Angels of Hope and the Pink Fund and Shades of Pink, and the more cancer specific types of organizations, because New Day helps any type of cancer, adult or pediatric. So to be able to say to anybody, about 40% of who we help are breast cancer patients, and more than half of who we help are single parent families. So when you think about these things, like, where can we send them to get the right types of services and meet their needs, and so that in the ways that we can, so that the continuum of care is such an awesome thing, and it goes from organization to organization, and it goes between individuals as well within a community who surround a family, right, on the ground level, if you will. So
It's so important for all these organizations, like you said, to work together. And I see that through the work that we're doing and through the work that you're doing. And we know, so we've had the Pink Fund on, we've had Shades of Pink on. So some of the organizations that you've mentioned, it's so important that all of these organizations exist and that we work together and find bridges. And I know that you're doing that. And you're such a great example, as are all these other organizations that you mentioned. Gina, I know that you shared a story before about the work that you're doing and a family that you were able to help through your work, but is there another story or two that you feel like really kind of touched your heart in a special way, of a family or an individual that you've worked with, or that you feel like really illustrates the importance of the great work that you're doing?
yeah, there's a few. I mean, over the years, there's always been those few families that I don't know, but like worked into my heart. Like, everybody that we help is so important to us. But once in a while, you get the privilege of meeting a family that really resonates with you. One that I think about, there's a couple. So first of all, I'm just going to say this. I mentioned this earlier, like half of the families are single parent families. I have a very special place in my heart, having been a single parent family for a short period of time before I remarried. I will tell you that the thought of like, what happens if I go down, or what if one of my kids is sick? What happens to all of us if we're not, able to, if I'm not able to work and to provide for my family and those types of things. It's that whole just group has just a special place in my heart. And I'm so grateful that we can help so many of these families. So that's the first one. But the family that I think about is it's Dennis and Christy Sykes. And and the reason this story really resonated with me is because Dennis is kind of like a man's man. And and he's the guy who, he's a veteran. He had 5 kids, had a great family, was the breadwinner, and he was just kind of like the guy. And when we stepped in to help him, he didn't even know how to ask for help, but he knew he needed help. And it's really hard sometimes for men to ask, or to even to receive the help that's being offered, right? But when we talked to him about what we were able to do to keep his family going and keep them in their house, I'll just never forget the reaction. And since the time that we helped his family, Dennis and his wife Christy have come full circle with our organization. They now support, they volunteer, they donate to us monthly. I mean, they talk about it in such a way that if we didn't have this, this is what would have happened to us. And now that we're back on our feet and things are good and we've been able to get through cancer, that now we're able to kind of pay that forward. And they've supported families at the holidays. I mean, they come and speak at our events. And those are the kind of families that always just kind of get me, it just and it's literally the fuel to keep going every day. It's why we get out of bed. I don't even think twice. It's like, I don't have one day of my life where I think, oh, I have to go to work today. It's never like that. This is just joy. And those are the families that kind of make it happen that way. So.
Well, and witnessing the impact and the ripple effect too. And also I love that full circle where some of the families that you're working with and supporting, that then they come back around and they're helping other people. And we just never know what one little thing we do, or one person that we help, how it can have that ripple effect, or how it will have that circular effect where people come back around to help others. And I know that you have so many stories like that of people who have come through the New Day Foundation and now are able to help other people, which is just incredible. Watch our Emmy-nominated documentary series featuring the girl inside and in tandem on our website or on our YouTube channel today. Check out onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com today. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel for our documentaries, videos, and podcast episodes. So where do you go from here? Where does the New Day Foundation go from here? And Gina, I will say this podcast is all about dreaming. So in your dream of dream worlds, 5 or 10 years down the line, where do you hope that the New Day Foundation goes from here? And what impact do you hope that you can make on the world?
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's so funny because sometimes I feel like my team has to grab me by the belt loops because I'm always sort of like looking that like down the road at where we want to be. And I've always said, I don't really like thinking 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, because who knows what tomorrow is, it can all turn. But the reality is I have had this dream since we started the organization. And that was, I want this organization to live on well beyond us, my husband and I. I want this organization to be serving and in service to the cancer community for many generations to come. As long as there's cancer, like, we want to be here. And so I have dreamed of having a $25 million endowment. I don't know why that number. I mean, why not 50 million, right? But I think if you have just enough that where you're going to be able to every year sustain your programs, serve more people, become an advocate for the community, and really see larger change. I can see where the problems are in the hospitals. I can tell you in each different hospital system, the strengths and the weaknesses that they have in terms of this offering this type of support to their patients. There are some that do it really, really well. They have community health workers and they have people on the ground that do a little bit more hand holding with the patient. And then there's others that it's like a free fall for these people. They don't know. And there's a lot of turnover in social work. So I dream that our hospitals would change some of the ways that they do things, that they would value the roles of social workers and community health workers and boots on the ground that can literally walk a family through, answer hard questions that maybe the doctor doesn't have time to answer because it's got nothing to do with their medical treatment. I dream for those things for families. I have so many thoughts and ideas about how the hospitals could help themselves. And truly, it's funny. I think hospitals think a lot about the bottom line, and they don't think of social work roles as affecting that bottom line. But I contend that if we keep more patients in treatment and okay at home, right, and okay at the hospital, if we keep those things in place, more people have a better chance to get well and stay compliant. And because it costs the hospital a lot of money when patients miss appointments and skip things. And now what could have been a simple appointment is now turned into like a 3-day hospital visit. You know what I mean? So we want the hospitals to become better partners in cancer care. Research and diagnostics and treatment are not the only parts of cancer care. There is an element of support. And I'm not just talking about yoga programs. That's great. I'm talking about financial and emotional support. Like, let's partner up. So yeah, big endowments, big, opportunities to partner with hospitals. Those are some of my long-term dreams for the organization, and that we can help everybody that has a need. I mean, there's so much need out there. 62,000 people diagnosed every year just in our state. So imagine how much more we could be doing.
Well, we can all do something, and I can't wait to continue to follow everything that you're doing. What can people do? What can we all do? All of us who are listening, what can we do to support your work and get involved in the incredible work that you're doing at the New Day Foundation?
Yeah, there's always ways to volunteer. We have many opportunities through some of our events and just things to do in our office and supporting our team here. We have some amazing events. We have our annual celebrity lip sync battle, which is a really fun event, and I hope you'll come next year. We just finished it in September, and we have the most fun. This is by far, I think, the best event in charity in the state of Michigan. It is 8 local celebrities are all competing on behalf of a family that they get to meet and get to say, hey, like, we want to go out there and do our best for you to see, and it's at the end of the day, all the families kind of receive a little bit of extra, support from New Day, but only one celebrity walks away with the trophy. And it's a fun night. So it pairs the silliness of, lip syncing with the very seriousness of cancer. And we make it a really fun night. And so always come to our events. Go if you like to golf. Who doesn't have a golf outing these days? There's the golf outings. We try to do that kind of stuff. So, and of course, there's always just donating and becoming, a philanthropic partner financially. Everybody's asking for money all the time, but wrap your heart around an organization or two and commit to them and give to them. I always say sometimes it's better to go a little bit deeper with a few than it is to give like a little bit to many. It has a greater impact for the ones that you do help. So think about that as well. It's just as an option. And, if anybody has $25 million laying around and they want to fund our endowment, please, by all means.
It's so easy. Just call. I will put the website in the show notes. People can easily get in touch with you. But you're so right. It's like all the little things, every little thing that we do, or even just going to events and supporting. And I didn't get to go to the lip sync battle, but I loved following on social media. So I will encourage everybody to go to your social media, and I'll put that in the show notes as well, because it was so fun to watch different celebrities that I know and love competing, and like hearing the family stories and all of that. It was so great. So we will be sure to follow everything that you're doing, and I can't wait to come next year and just encourage everybody to support the great work that you're doing. And on this podcast, I always say that the free and easy way to support anything is just to follow on social media and share it. And you never know who also might be in need of resources like the New Day Foundation. So also it's important for us to share so that people know what types of resources and support is out there.
Yeah.
Gina, I'm curious to hear about if you could get to the very root of why you do what you do every single day. I know every single day you're getting to experience a lot of beautiful stories and people that have been helped through your work, but also you're dealing with cancer. And there are a lot of really difficult, painful stories. I'm sure there are parts of your own story that come to the surface when you're watching families go through their cancer journey. But if you could get to the very root of why you do what you do every single day, what the driving force behind your work with the New Day Foundation is, what would you say that that root is?
That's very easy for me. The root of all of this is my faith. It is the driving force. It's been made very clear to me. Not everybody is equipped to do this type of work. And I know there are some people who have been affected by cancer who literally want to get as far away from cancer as they can possibly get, when that experience has come to an end. And for me, I felt immediately called to walk directly into that burning building, if you will, called cancer, because the experiences that I've had, I feel would almost be wasted without using them for the good of others. So the foundation of my life is to love God and love others. And there's a lot of way you can love people, right? There's so many ways you can do that. For me, that calling has been in this particular space. It's been to be, you know, not just a resource, but one of my favorite things that happens throughout the course of any week or month is that people will just reach out to me and say, this is what's happening in our story, and they just want me to listen, or I'm not fixing anything or changing anything, but it is such a privilege to me to be let inside of that place that I know feels very alone, and it can feel very dark and at times. And so to have the courage to pick up a phone and to call me, that to me, that's a privilege. And I think God designed and wired me to be able to do those things. I look at surgeons and I go, I could never cut into another human being's body like that, but they were wired for that. And I think I'm wired. I think God designs us all uniquely to do, and gives us the experiences in our lives, the good and the bad, for us to use them for a purpose that is beyond who we are today. And ultimately, I'm telling you that when you live in that purpose that He's assigned to you, there is nothing more gratifying. And by the way, it's not always easy. So, and that's okay. It's not supposed to be. I think if it was easy, it maybe wouldn't be the thing that you were being called to. So, it's a lot of learning. There's a lot of praying. There's a lot of encouragement that I need from friends and family along the way. But this is what I was made to do. I feel pretty confident about that. So, yeah.
Well, you're doing it and you're such an example to all of us. And you truly are a one girl revolution. And that's why I wanted to have you on this podcast. But who's a one girl revolution in your life? Who is a woman or girl that inspires you?
Yeah. I would have to say my best friend in the world, her name is Colleen Shoemaker, and we met in college, I don't know, sophomore year, something like that. Actually, no, it was maybe a little later than that. It was probably our senior year, come to think of it. But Colleen and I met, and we were dating. I started to date Matt, and she was dating her now husband, Mike, and they were best friends. So like we just immediately just like boom. And she is a woman of faith. She's a woman who's been through a tremendous amount with her own family and her own story. And her son was born with a congenital heart defect, had 5 open heart surgeries before he was 5, had a heart transplant by the time he was 9, ended up getting a post-transplant form of cancer when he was 19 or 18 years old, delaying his ability to go off to school. She's been through so much. And it has been a privilege for me to walk through this life with her by my side. She's been a steady force and a presence. And I don't know many people like her. So having a best friend in the world who you admire so greatly, and who, has the courage to straighten you out when you need it, and who's willing to have that reciprocated and who is grounded in the same faith that you share is something that I'm just so thankful for her every day of my life. And it's a good thing to have a friend like that. And by the way, who loves to have a really good time.
Yeah.
Oh,
We need good people like that in our life.
yeah.
And we talk about this on this podcast about building a sisterhood, right? Finding people that you can have fun with, but who also are just going to walk through the joys and also the difficult moments in life, because we all need that support.
We do. I mean, listen, it's our sisters that keep us going. I have a tribe of like 10 women. Colleen and I are in that group. It is, I mean, it's the most irreverent and grounded and unbelievably like wild and fun and supportive and uplifting group of people. And to have that is one of the greatest gifts in life. I don't know. I know there are people that don't have it. And I say, seek it, find it, build it, grow it, nurture it, whatever it takes. It's just a gift to have those kind of relationships. So I'm very thankful for that.
Well, I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast. I can't wait to continue to follow everything that you're doing and all the great work that you're doing. And I will be sure to put your website and your social media links and everything in the show notes so people can easily get in touch with you. But before I let you go, Gina, I always end this podcast on one question. So I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
Have the courage to take on the challenges that are in front of you. Be willing to ask for help from others and ground yourself in faith so that you have a place to fall. Yeah.
Well, you are such a great example of that for all of us. And I'm just so grateful to know you, Gina. So thank you so much for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast. And thank you for all the incredible work that you do.
Thank you, Kate. It's been a privilege to talk with you today. I mean, I love what you're doing. Keep doing it and keep inspiring people because that's what you're doing.
Oh, thanks so much, Gina. For more from One Girl Revolution, to listen to all of our podcast episodes, watch our Emmy-nominated documentary series, follow us on social media, donate to our nonprofit organization, and more, please visit onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.